Hello everyone, good Woch. Today we're learning Daf Kufov and Bovekama. And we're going to start from Kufhei Amud Beis, in the middle of the page, Tanya Oma ben Azai. So it says over there, Tanya Oma ben Azai Shalosh Shvuos, and there's two types of Shvuos that someone who found a Aveda and he made a Shvuo L'Sheker will be Chayev. And we're going to see what's the case. So Reuven came to Shimon and he told Shimon, you found my Aveda, do you know anything about my Aveda? And Shimon said, I have no idea about your Aveda, nothing. And then we find out that his moida, that he ikebra, he recognized his Aveda lost, v'lo b'moitza, and he saw that someone found it, and he didn't know who that guy who found it, who this person who found the Aveda. Or the second case, b'moitza, he said, oh, I saw someone picking up Aveda, I know who he is, it was so-and-so, v'lo but I didn't recognize that it's your Aveda. Or he said, Loibo, I didn't recognize no your Aveda, v'lo b'moitza, but I don't know, and I also don't know who found it. So the Gemara says straight away, if that's the case, lo boy v'lo b'moitza, if he doesn't know who found it and he doesn't know whose Aveda it is, kushto ishtova, he made a true shvur. Why v'chayev korban shvur and choimish on such a thing? He didn't lie anything. So the Gemara, Ema bo u'b'moitza. The third case is that he's moida at the end that he knew there was his Aveda and he also knew who found it and he made the shvur l'sheker that he has no idea. So what about these shvuos? What's the din of these shvuos? Someone who made such a shvuo l'sheker, is he chayev korban shvuo or is he not chayev korban shvuo in these cases? Rav Ami Omar Rab Chanina Liptur, that someone who made such a shvuo l'sheker is potem korban shvuo. V'shmuel Omar lechiyuv, that he'll be chayev a korban shvuo. Ubeplukta ta'anitanu, and this machloikis of the Amoraim or chayev or potem in such a case, it's the same machlokes like the Tanoim, the Tanya that we learned in the Brisa, Mashbiai Dechod. Reuven comes to Shimon and tells him, do you know Eidos about Levi owing me money? And the Eid Echod says, I have no idea, and I'm making a shvur that I have no idea. And then he's moided that he knows the Eidos that Levi owes him money. So it says Potter, that this Eid, the Shimon, is Potter from a korban and from Choimish. Rabbi Lozer Rab Shimon, Rabbi Lozer, the son of Shimon, says, Mechayev, he's chayev a korban shvur, and he's chayev also choimish. What's the source of the machlokes? Ma'asovar, one of them holds dovar goyim l'momen k'momen domi. Something that causes money is like money. And since this eid echod nua eidos, if he'd be made, maybe Levi wouldn't make a shvur l'sheker, because the eid echod can't be mechayev momen, could only be mechayev shvur. He wouldn't make a eidos sheker, and therefore he'd pay. So it's dovar goyim l'momen. It's not momen mamish like two eidim, but it's dovar goyim l'momen because he could be mechayev shvur, and maybe that would be mechayev Levi to pay. Umasaval lav k'momen domi. That he's mechayev a shvur is not considered koifa momen because he only could be mechayev shvur, and therefore also by us these cases of the person who knew about the Aveda some information, but he didn't know everything, or he knew everything, and he made a shvur that he knows nothing. So it's also davar goyim l'momen because if he would say the truth and say, oh, I knew who found it, or I knew that was lost, etc. So the one who lost the Aveda would know who to go to, or would know that was lost, where it got lost. He'd get more information, it would be easier to find his Aveda. So that's davar goyim l'momen. Omar Rav Sheishes, says Rav Sheishes, a koifer bepikod, someone who Reuven comes to Shimon and says, where's my deposit I gave you? I gave you a golden watch. And Shimon says, I don't know what you're talking about. And now he doesn't make a shvur yet. Nase olav gazlan v'chai bointzim. Straight away by him being koifa and saying, I don't know what you're talking about, even though he didn't make a shvur, he's already chai bointzim. And if before that he was just a shoima, and he's potter for gneva aveda and ointzim, now that he becomes a gazlan, he's chai for everything. The tuna, and we have a brisa that's a riot to this. It says in the pasuk, v'kichesh bo, and he lied about it. Lemadnu oinish. We know the punishment that he needs to pay. Azor minayin. How do you know that it's forbidden to do so? Talmud loymar. It says in the pasuk, lo tikachshu. It says that it's forbidden to say the lie. My love. Are we not talking about loinish momen? Rashi's goris. My love loinish kfira. That it's talking about where he was just koifa and he didn't make a shvur, and already we could see that just from being koifa, he's already chai bointim, he becomes like a gazlan. So the Gemara the Brisa is talking about loinish shvur. It's talking about where a person said, I don't have anything to do with you pekodin you're talking about, and he made a shvur l'sheker, and then everyone agree that then he become a gazlan and yichayev. So there's no right to Rav Sheshes. Said the Gemara, Homid diktoni seifa, since it said in the seifa of this brisa, said the Bach, the ishtova that he made a shvur, the seifa of the brisa we're going to see in a second says another case where he made a shvur l'sheker. Michlal, it must be that the reisha de lo ishtova, they did make a shvur. Let's see what the seifa, diktoni seifa, v'nishba al sheker, if you made a shvur l'sheker, and it says that you have to pay chomish and Osham, Lamadnu Oynish, that's a punishment. Azor Minayin, how do you know that it's forbidden to make a shvur l'sheker? Talmud Loimar, we learn from the Pasuk Lo Tishakri, you shouldn't lie. Umid the Sefer of the Brisa is talking about the Ishtova, that he made the shvur, not only a kosha, a reisha, that it must be talking about the Lo Ishtova. He did make a shvur, and already then he's chayev for ointzim. So l'chor we could see a raya that, like Rav Sheshes, that even just from a kosha you're chayev. So the Gemara Amri, no. Idi ve'idi d'ishtova. Both of them are talking about ben reisha, ben sefer, is talking about that he made a shvur. And what's the difference between the reisha and the sefer? Why do we say it in two cases? Kanshe oida. One case is talking about after he made the shvur l'sheker, he admitted himself that he made the shvur l'sheker, and therefore he'll be chayev chomish and osham. Kanshe bo edim, that he didn't admit, and Edim came and said that he lied. So the din is, when Edim come and say that he lies, the din is that he has to pay back the capital, but he doesn't have to pay the chomish and osham. So says the Gemara, idi ve'idi d'ishtova, kan she'oida koidem shebo edim, idi ve'idi d'ishtova, kan shebo edim, also edim, if edim came but he never admitted, chai be'ointzim, he has to pay ointzim, but he doesn't have to pay chomish and korban osham. Oidu, if he was moide from himself, chai be'keren v'chomish, then he has to pay, because he wants to do tshuva, he has to pay also a chomish, a fifth, and also a korban osham. Mosiv Romin Bar Choma, Asa Kasher Romin Bar Choma, on what we learned, it says, Shekenegdei Choshed El Shvua Keitzad, meaning, normally we know, we're going to see it also later on today, that normally from the Torah, who makes a shvua about, who makes a shvur, the toivea, the one who's claiming, or the one who's nitva, the one who gets claimed? So normally the one who makes a shvur, Reuven's toivea Shimon. Shimon makes a shvur to pata himself. No, Reuven makes a shvur to claim. And over there it says in the Brisa of shekenegdei chosher shvur, that there is a case that if the one who's nitva, Shimon, who we're saying he owes money, he's chosher shvur, we don't trust him because he made already he's a liar. We know he's a liar. So the din is, he's potter. Sorry, we don't trust him. We can't let him make a shvur, and therefore the toivea, he's the one who makes a shvur in such a case. Okay, Tzad, what's the case? Echad shvur se'edus, doesn't matter if the one who's nitva in the past lied about the edus, he doesn't know edus, and really he knew about it. Echad shvur se'pikodin, that he made a shvur, they doesn't owe someone a pikodin, and really he had the pikodin. Afilu shvur shav, even if he still made a shvur l'sheker, he said today's Tuesday, and really today is Motzei Shabbos. So he's possible a shvur. So in such a case, he can't make a shvur. Shekenegdoi, the toivea makes a shvur. Says the Gemara of Isa, if it's true, or Rav Sheshes says that by kfira by itself you become a gazlan, b'kfira de'ifselei, why do you need to come of the case? V'echad shvur sapikod, they made a shvur about pikodin. Already when he said, I don't owe you anything, I don't know anything about this pikodin, he's already a gazlan, Rav Sheshes says. So if he's a gazlan, he's already posel edus, he's posel a shvur. You can't make a shvur. Why does it say shekenegdoi only in a case where the guy made a shvur l'sheker, even if it was only makchish? Amri, ochev in my skina, and here we're talking about the koi ba'agam. The lav kfirahu. The sova ishtamitna ad azlina umaysinalei. So we're saying a teretz. When did Rav Sheshes talk about that if Reuven comes to Shimon and he says to him, where is my golden watch? And Shimon says, I don't know what you're talking about. He straight away becomes a gazlan. That's talking about where the golden watch is sitting in Shimon's cupboard. So therefore, why are you lying? It's in your cupboard. So therefore, you become a gazlan and you chayev bointzim. But over here in the Brisa that we say only a shvur is mechayev, it's talking about where Reuven came to Shimon for his golden watch, and Shimon lost the golden watch. It's, let's say, talking about animal. He said it's in the valley, and therefore Shimon says, I don't know what you're talking about, because he's going to quickly go run to the valley to find this animal to give it back. That's why he was koifa, just to get away for a second to pay back what he owes. And therefore he's not called a gazlan until he actually makes a shvur. But in a case where it's actually in his house, why are you lying about it? It's in your house. Straight away you become a gazlan. Hey, I'll bring you a raya about this difference about kaim ba'agam and not kaim ba'agam. The Omar Ravidi Ba'avin said that koifa b'milva, Reuven comes to Shimon and says, you owe me £100, I gave you a loan. And Shimon says, I don't know what you're talking about. And then afterwards he admits, really I owe Reuven £100. Kosher leidus. He's kosher leidus, and the reason is because Shimon, the reason why I said them to owe £100, because he used this £100, he was allowed to use it, it's alvo, and now he doesn't have the money, so he says, I don't know what you're talking about, but he's planning to pay back tomorrow when he gets the money, or he loans money from someone else. That's why just by kfir it doesn't become a gazlan. But Pikodin, if Reuven comes to Shimon and he says, where's my golden watch? And he says, I don't know what you're talking about, straight away he becomes posel edus, because it becomes like a gazlan. Why? Because the Pikodin should be by him. He shouldn't be using it, it's a deposit. He only gave it to him to protect it, not to use it. So therefore straight away they said, I don't know what you're talking about, it becomes a gazlan. So it's a raya that there's a difference if it's kaim ba'agam or not. V'ama Ilfa says like Mar Shaila on Rav Sheshes. Ilfa said shvur koina, that when a person makes a shvur that he doesn't owe anything, he is koina with that. As the Gemara says, the Gemara is medayik. The Gemara understands shvur dekanya. When he makes a shvur, that's when he's koina. That means he becomes a gazlan and he's chay bointzim. Aval kfira, just saying I don't owe anything. Loi kanya, he's not koina. It doesn't fit in Rav Sheshes that he says that by kfira bilvad you become a gazlan. So the Gemara the same teretz. Ochinami dekaim ba'agam. When did Ilfa speak? Ilfa was talking about when the guy was koifa and it was in the valley. And we said in the valley it's not called the proper kfira because he's trying to get it back soon. But Rav Sheshes was talking about when it was in his house and he said, I don't know what you're talking about. In that case, straight away you become a gazlan. The Ibo is saying another way to understand what Ilfa said. My shvur koina. What does it mean shvur koina? Kedirav Huna, like what Rav Huna said. The Omar of Huna, Omar Rav said Rav Huna in the name of Rav. Mone libiot. Reuven comes to Shimon and says, you owe me a money, it's a type of coin. V'aloyoyma, and Shimon says, En licho biyodi, I don't owe you anything. V'nishba, and Shimon made a shvur that he doesn't owe anything. V'achakach bo eidim, and then Adim came to say that Shimon really did owe Reuven money. Potter, he doesn't have to pay anything. A very big chiddush. Shenemar velokach ba'olo velo yeshalem. It's talking about Pikodin, when Reuven gave Shimon a Pikodin, and it says velokach ba'olo velo yeshalem, and the Bailim took it velo yeshalem. So we darshan kevan shekibloi Bailim shvur. Once Shimon made the shvur to the Bailim that he doesn't owe him anything, shuvein mishami momin. Even if we find out that he really stole it, he doesn't have to pay any money to give back to Reuven. And that's the big chiddush, and the Gemara is going to discuss it all daf kuf vav and aleph. So, but the Gemara is saying over here that when Ilfa said shvur koina, it doesn't mean that shvur is koina to become a gazlan. It means that if you made the shvur, you don't have to pay the capital back. Gufa, we just learned, Omar Ravuna, Omar Rav. Ravuna says the same Rav. Mone libiot. Reuven comes to Shimon and says, you have a money of mine by you. And Shimon says, I don't have anything of yours by me. V'nishba, and he made the shvur, but Adim, and afterwards Adim came and said, no, Shimon owes Reuven money. Potter doesn't have to pay anything back. Shenerma, like we learned, v'lokach balo v'lo yishalem, kevan shekilu bailim shvur. Once the bailim get a shvur from the shoyma, shuvein mishami momin. Even if Adim come afterwards, the Ganev who had the Pikodin doesn't have to pay anything. Omar Rava, says Rava, Mistaber Milsa de Rav, Bemilva. Rav was talking about Lechora, the Svara is saying only when Reuven gave Shimon a loan, that this money that Reuven gave Shimon, now Shimon is allowed to use it, it's his money. And therefore when he made a shvur, he's koinet and he's not chayev to pay back. Avol Pikodin, but if Reuven gave Shimon a golden watch to keep in a safe, and Shimon made the shvur that he doesn't have anything, and then Adim come. In such a case, since Bershusha de Morokoi, this golden watch belongs to Reuven all the time, therefore if Adam come, he has to give back the golden watch. And when it says in the pasuk v'lo yeshalem that we darshan from it, that's dafka v'lo yeshalem, to pay from his own pocket. But over here, it's literally Reuven's golden watch. For sure, he has to give it back. So the Gemara ve'eloikim, it's a loshen shvur. Omar Rav, the Rav also spoke afilu b'pikodin, even b'pikodin. How do I know that? The chiksik crow. Where do we dash in this whole pasuk of velikach bala v'lo yishalem? What are we talking about over there? B'pikodin ksiv. It's talking about b'pikodin. So it must be the Rav spoke also about pikodin, not like what Rav says. Yossi Rav Nachman v'Kamalo Shmeitzer. Rav Nachman sat and he said the Shmeitzer, this chiddush of Rav, that a guy makes a shvur about pikodin or alva and his koifa, and then Edim come, he's chayev to pay, it is potter to pay. And I just want to say this din is dafka when Edim came afterwards. For sure, if afterwards he was moida himself, he's potter to pay. Sorry, if he's moida himself that he made the shvur l'sheka, he needs to pay keren, choymish, and asham. This whole chiddush of Rav that he doesn't have to pay is only if Edim came and he never admitted that he lied. Rav Achabar min Yumi Nachman. Rav Achabar min Yumi asked the kasha of Nachman. This case, Reuben comes to Shimon and tells him, Eichin Piktoini, where's my deposit? Omar le Ovad, it's lost. Mashbiach ani, please make a shvur of Oimer Amen. He says, yeah, shvur. Ve'edim Moise she'ochlo, and we have Edim that he ate it. Mishalem is sakara, and he has to pay the capital, and that doesn't fit in like what Rav said. Oida me'atzmoi, if Shimon admitted by himself without aiding that he stole it, Mishalim Karen v'choymish v'asham. Not only capital, he also has to pay choymish and asham on top of the capital. So the clearly it says that if Adim came, you have to pay, and Rav said you don't have to pay. Amal Rav Nachman, and what are we talking about over here? It's talking about where he made the shvur of a kfira outside Bezdin. When did Rav say his chiddush that if you make a shvur you don't have to pay anymore? If it's a proper shvur sadayonim, that it was in Bezdin, but this was a shvur non Bezdin, such a type of shvur doesn't pater you from paying back. If so, let's look at the sefer of this price. Reuben comes to Shimon and says, where's my deposit? It's stolen. It's stolen. Make a shvur for me. And he makes a shvur. And Edim come and say, he stole it. The din is, Mishalim Tashlumi Kefel. He has to pay double. Not only the capital, he has to pay double, like a ganav. If he admitted by himself without Edim, Mishalim Keren Choymish v'Asham, he has to pay not only the capital, he also has to pay a fifth and a korban Asham. If you think the sefer is talking about this price, is talking about outside Bezdin, not proper shvur, Mika Kefel, do you have to pay Kefel? Kefel, you only have to pay if Reuben comes to Shimon and he says, where's my pikadon? And Shimon says, I don't know anything what you're talking about. And Shimon made a shvur in Bezdin, a proper shvur. Then we say, if he stole it, he has to pay kefil. But a shvur out of Bezdin, you don't have to pay kefil. So since it's telling the Bryce that you do have to pay kefil, it must be that it's a shvur in Bezdin. If it's a shvur in Bezdin, so the Reisha also is a shvur in Bezdin. If it's a Reisha shvur in Bezdin, why don't you have to pay the capital? It's a kash on Rav. Amalei, he told him, I could say a doicha kateret that the first case of the Bryce is talking about outside Bezdin, and the second case of the Bryce is talking about inside Bezdin. But I don't want to say a tchak de kateret because it doesn't really make sense that the same Bryce is talking about two different places. So I'll tell you a different teretz. Idi ve'idi beBezdin, they both talk about Bezdin, v'loi kashya. Kan bekofatz, kan shaloi bekofatz. In the Reisha is when Bezdin will not mechayiv your shvur, and he jumped and he said a shvur. So that's not called the proper shvur sadayonim, and on that it doesn't pater you from the capital. Masha'inken in the sefer of the Bryce is talking about with Bezdin, loi kofatz, and Bezdin will mechayiv him shvur, and he made a shvur, and then we found that he stole it. That's why he has to pay kefel. And it's not so dochak to say it because it's both talking about in Bezdin. Just one he made the shvur by himself, and one Bezdin made him make a shvur. It's less of a doichak from saying that one is in Bezdin, one is outside of Bezdin. Okay, Amalei. So all these terutzim to answer Rav, who was it? Rav Nachman was saying these terutzim. So Amalei Rami Rav Nachman, he asked him, Mechti, let's see, the Rav lo yisvirloch. You don't hold of Rav's chiddush if you make a shvur and then Eidim come you potter from the capital. Mashkunin efshoch ad Rav lo maloch. Why are you going instead of Rav to answer for him all different ways to explain the Brisa, Tumasha Kofats, etc., etc. You don't even hold like Rav. Why are you trying to help Rav out? I'm coming to explain how Rav would learn. The Rav, this is how Rav will explain the Brisa. But I and Ochanami don't hold like this, and I learned the Brisa very simple, and that he made a shvua in Bezdin, and he still has to pay the capital. Said the Gemara, Rav Krokomar, why don't you hold of Rav? Rav has a posuk. Said the Gemara, Amri Kro, Lechola Nishboim Shabatur, Nishboim Veloy Mishalmim Hu Da'asa. That we darshan not like Rav, and the posuk that tells you Velokach Ba'olo Veloy Yishalim is coming to tell you something else. That to tell you this din that we learned early on, that Reuven's Tovei Shimon, and you need to make a shvua. Who makes the shvua? The one who's sued, the one who we tell him. Reuven tells Shimon, you need to pay me. So Shimon is the one who makes the shvua, and he patters himself. Not that Reuven makes the shvua and he forces Shimon to pay. But we learn, Velokach Ba'olo Velo Yeshalem. Misha Olav Leshalem, the one who needs to pay, we claiming you need to pay, Unish, but he has to make a shvua, and that's a limit for Kol HaTorah Kula. Except for specific cases, like we learned, Shekenegdoi, etc. Moshe Rav Amnuna asked the cash on the din of Rav. Ishbi Olav Chamisha Palmim. Reuven came to Shimon and he told him, make him a shvua, and you owe me money. And Shimon said the shvua, and then Reuven came again, and Shimon said again a shvua about the same £100. 5 times it happened. Ben bifnei Bezdin, doesn't matter, was in front of Bezdin. Ben shaloi bifnei Bezdin, doesn't matter, wasn't in front of Bezdin. V'kof olav, and he made a shvua l'sheker, and he admitted afterwards. Chayev al kol achas ve'achas. He has to pay on every time and time. He has to bring a choymesh and osham. V'omar Rab Shimon, he explains, matam, what's the reason he has to do every time another choymesh and osham? L'chorah, he wasn't koifa anything. Only the first time he was koifa, he said, I don't owe you. The second time he was koifa already. He's not koifa moment already. He's potter already. Oil, the reason is, if after the first time that he lied, he'd say, I owe you, so then he'd owe him again. So now they made the second shvua, even though he wasn't moida, it's like his koifer again, and therefore he has to pay 5 times. The hocha, and in this price, you can't say it's talking about kofats. It's talking about that he jumped by himself. The hocha kofats loy motis omerus. It can't be, because it says it should be all of. He forced him a shvua. He didn't make the shvua by himself. Doni. Chutz lebezdin loy motis omerus. You can't say it's talking about no in front of Bezdin, because bifnei Bezdin ktoni. It says it was in front of Bezdin. So it says it was in front of Bezdin. It says he was mashpia him, and it says that he has to pay, because if he was moide, he needs to pay. But we're saying that you know I have to pay if you made the shvua, it patters you. So the one who asked it, Rav Amnuna, he also gave an answer. Let's start in Ktoni. He explained this brisa to the side. He was put on him the make a shvua. That it's not kofatz, but it was chutz lebezdin. Ube bezdin, it was in bezdin kofatz. He made the shvua by himself, so he didn't have the both conditions to make a proper shvua. That bezdin forced you to make the shvua, and you made the shvua in bezdin. It was in bezdin, but he made the shvua by himself, or he forced him to make the shvua, but it was outside bezdin. Moshe Rav asked the kasha, balabai sheton tanas gana bepikodin. Someone who made he said, Reuben came to Shimon and where's my watch? And Shimon said, it got stolen. And potam mechino v'nishbo. And he made the shvua that got stolen. V'hoido. And then he admitted that he lied. Bo edim. And then also edim came and said that he lied. Imachlo boy edim oida. If before the edim came, he was moida by himself, Mishalem Keren, he pays a capital, v'choymish and a fifth for Osham. But he doesn't pay kefil because moida b'knas potter. V'imashabo edim moida, if he was moida only after edim came, Mishalem tashlumi kefil, he has to pay kefil because he himself, he's considered a ganev like a ganev, because of someone who tines gneva but b'kodin and makes a shvua is like a ganev and pays kefil. V'osham, and he also has to pay, he bring a korban Osham because he was moida, and someone who was moida and they made the shvua l'sheke, he needs a kapara. You can't say that was talking about outside Bezdin, and you can't say that he made the shvua by himself before Bezdin made him make a shvua. Why not? Because it says kefel ktoni, and kefel you'll only be chayev if he made the shvua that Bezdin forced him to make. And it still says that he has to pay kefel, and if you have to pay kefel, you must say you must, if you have to make a shvur, if you pay kefil, there's also a capital. And Rav says that if you made a shvur, you potter from the keren. Elo marab Rava says Rava teretz kol oida loish. If kol oida, any case, this is we said early on. If Reuven came to Shimon and Shimon made a shvur sheker, and then Shimon was moida loish not toin tanis ova. Doesn't matter when he lied, Shimon, and he said it was lost. Loish not toin tanis ganav. Doesn't matter if he said it was stolen. Loi Omar Rav never spoke in that case, and if he was moide me'atzmoide, he made the shvur sheker, he has to pay the capital, and he's not potter from the capital. Doksiv, it says in the pasuk, v'isvoda, and he admitted the boy Shlumi that he needs to pay keren, capital, v'choymesh, a fifth, and therefore it says clean in the Torah that if you make a shvur sheker, you have to pay the capital, not like Rav. So Rav never spoke in a case where the person was moide me'atzmoide. In a case where Reuven comes to Shimon and Shimon said he gave me a picodin but it was stolen, and then Adim came and said no, it's by him. Also in that case we know that you pay kefil, and therefore you also pay obviously the capital, and Rav never said you're potter from the capital. Nami lo yomar Rav. Doksiv, it said in the pasuk tashlumi kefil in such a case. If someone's tiny that got stolen and really he stole it, they has to pay kefil. Kikoma Rav, when was Rav talking about that he said this big chiddush, you don't have to pay the capital, only a very specific din. Kigoin sheton tanas avad. Reuven came to Shimon, where's my picodin? Shimon said it's lost, not stolen, lost. V'nishba v'lo yodei, he made a shvua, a lie, and he wasn't moide, he didn't admit by himself. Ubo Adim, and only if Adim came afterwards. And then you're potter from the capital, and therefore we don't have a kasha from the price over there, because the price over there is talking about where he's toin tanas gneva. If you're toin tanas gneva, you don't pater yourself from capital. When did Rav talk about when you're toin tanas aveda? Oza Rav Gamda went v'omer l'shmaite. He said this whole sugya kameder Rav Ashi in front of Rashi, and he said to him that comes out to Maskono, the Rav only spoke in a case where he's toin tanas ovad, and then Adim come. But if toin tanas gonav and Adim came, he'll be chayev. Omale Ashto, he told him like this: Umar Rav Amnuna, what Rav Amnuna? Talmidei de Rav, that he's a Talmid de Rav. Yoda, and he know when Rav spoke, Do Omar Rav Oida, that Rav even spoke about where a case where he was moida, not only a case where Bo Adim. He must have known that to Kumoisiv Oida, and he asked the kasha of Oida, because earlier on Rav Amnuna asked the kasha, and Rav Amnuna asked the kasha about a case where he was mashbioi chamish pomim, and he's chayiv on every time. And we said the reason why he chayiv every time, because if it was moida, he'd need to pay. And we asked the kasha, why does he need to pay? Rav said if you made a shvur, you're potter. But we are saying now that in a case where he's moida, Rav's moida that you need to pay. And Rav Amnuna knows where Rav spoke about, and afilu achi asked the kasha. Elamai, we could see Rav Amnuna know that Rav spoke even in a case of oida, not like what we're saying now, only in a case of bo edim. Doma Rav Oido, Kumoisiv Oido, Va'at Omeris, and you're telling me Oido lo Yomar Rav, you're telling me that Rav never spoke in a case where he was Moide Me'atzmo, only in a case where Bo Eidim is potter. From the Kasha from Rav Amnuna of Oido, we could see that Rav Amnuna understood that Rav spoke also know about Bo Eidim, even in a case of Oido, not like what we said. Omale Rav Acha Saba Rav Ashi, Rav Acha Saba said to Rav Ashi, explaining, no, really, Rav only spoke about in a case of Bo Edim. So what's the kasha of Rav Amnuna in a case where he was moida? So he explains, Rav Amnuna ochike kashele. This is what Rav Amnuna's kasha was to Rav Ashi, on Rav. If you want to tell me that in a case where he made a shvur, ki also Edim, if Edim came afterwards, Mechayev, you'll be chayiv, not like Rav said, that's why in the case where a person made 5 times a shvur, mechayvin le korban a shvur basraisa, you make him bring a osham on the 2nd shvur, on the 3rd shvur, on the 4th shvur, on the 5th shvur. Why? Because maybe he will admit. And even though they didn't admit, but because Aiden could have come and say that he's chayiv and he'd need to pay, that's why he's koifa moment in the 2nd shvur. But if you tell me, also Adim Potter, if Adim come and say you stole it and you tiny it was lost, and you'll be potter like Rav's Chiddush. Me kemiti, is there anything dilu osisade umasade be potter? If Adam will come and say that he stole it, he'll be potter. Va'anu neiku v'nechayv korban hashvur. And we will be mechayiv him a korban on making the shvur oil v'yochel lachzor le'oidos, because maybe if he would admit, he would be chayiv. Ashtomi eloi oida. Now, after the first time he made the shvur, was he moida? He was not moida. So if he wasn't moida, he's not chayiv. So even if Adam come, he'll be potter. So why mechayiv him a shvur, a korban on the second shvur l'sheker that he made? He was koifa, he wasn't moida. If Adam come, he'll still be potter. So why mechayiv him in the second time? Bishleim, if Adam come and we be mechayiv, he will be chayiv. That's why the second shvur is also called the kfiras moment, because if Adam would come, he'd be chayiv. So that's Rav Amnuna's kasha, and really Rav Amnuna knew that Rav only spoke in the case of Bo Adam, not in the case of Oida. Very good. So we answer. So we say the Rav's chiddush that someone who's koifa moment and makes a shvur, he's potter to pay the capital, is only talking about where Bo Edim afterwards, and it's only talking about where the guy tained Aveda, not when the guy tained Gneva. Omar Rabbi Chia bar Abba, Omar Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Chia bar Abba says in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, Atoyim tanas gana bepikodin. Reuben comes to Shimon and he says, you have my golden watch, or my cow is by you, and my cow is by you. And Shimon says, no, it got stolen. And he made the shvur, mishalin tashlumi kefel. He has to pay, and then Edim come that he really stole it. So Shimon has to pay double like a ganev. If Shimon slaughtered it or sold it, he has to pay 4 and 5 times, depends if it's an ox or sheep. Why? Oil the ganev, since a ganev himself, if Shimon stole this item from Reuven, he pays double if he's caught. And a pikodim that's by Shimon, and he says it got stolen and he stole it, he also pays kefel. So we learn one from each other. Ma ganev, like a ganev himself, shomishalim kefel, he pays kefel for stealing. Tovach umocha, if he slaughtered or sold it, mishalim tashlumi abor v'chamisha, he has to pay 4 or 5 times. After tanas ganev pikodim, even someone who tanas that it was stolen and really he stole it, shomishalim tashlumi kefel, that he pays kefel. If tovach umocha, if he slaughtered it or sold it, he has to pay 4 and 5 times. So we're saying a big chiddush. Rabbi Chia bar Abba says in the name of Rabbi Yochanan that like a ganev pays kefel and dalet vehei if he slaughtered it, someone who's 10 times ganev also pays kefel and dalet vehei if he slaughters it or sells it. Asig Marakash on this, how could you learn from a ganev? Male ganev shekei mishan tashlumi kefel shloi b'shvur. Shimon stole off Reuven, he needs to pay even if he never made the shvur, just from stealing it. Toima, how could we learn to a case between Tanas Ganev that Shimon got it at a deposit and now he lied that it was stolen? Shein Mishan Tashlumi Kefel, he only has to pay double, Elo B'Shvur, only if he made the Shvur l'sheker to Reuven. So you can't, it's different. Here you need the Shvur, here you don't need the Shvur. So maybe in a case where you need the Shvur, you're not chayav dalet vehei. So the Gemara Amri Keshi, it's a hekesh, and Rashi explains because they both learned in the same pasuk, because it said in the pasuk, Imimotze Ganev, that's Toma Ganev himself, Imimotze Ganev, and we learned that means the Ganev wasn't found. We found out that he stole it. So it's the same pasuk, it's a hekesh. And you don't ask me a kash on a hekesh. Said the Gemara, that's very good. We had this sugya early on that this pasuk is talking about 2 different cases, one by a ganev himself and one is someone who tainas ganev. Shaper, it's very good that you could say a hekesh. Elo lemando oma, to the mando oma, hai motza ganev, im lo motza ganev, tavar between tainas ganev. He learns that another mando oma learned that this pasuk is talking about both cases, is talking about between tainas ganev, and not talking about ganev himself. Michael and Meimaz, there's no hekesh anymore. So you could ask a kasha, maybe here you're not chayav for dalet vehei because you need a shvur. So the Gemara Amri, ganev haganev. It says, imimotze aganev. You could have said imimotze ganev. Why does it say hey? It's coming to tell you that someone who toyen tanas ganev has the same din like a ganev himself. The extra hey tells you, and what like a ganev himself chayav 4 and 5 times if he slaughtered or sold it. So also, turn tanas ganev is also chayav 4 and 5 times. He has to cash on him. Eichon Shoiri, Reuben comes to Shimon and says, where's my ox? Shimon tells him, Nignav, it's stolen, Mashpiecha, and he please make a shvur of Oma, and he made a shvur, Edim Oisoi, Sha'ochloi, and Edim come and say, Shimon ate this ox, Vishalim Tashlumi Kefel, he has to pay double. In this case, the Ef Sholikazai is possible Shchita, it says that Shimon ate it, so he must have done Shchita. Victoni Mishalim Tashlumi Kefel, he says he pays double, Tashlumi Kefel in, Tashlumi Dalet Vehei Loi, it says he has to pay double, doesn't have to pay Dalet Vehei, and if he, the Chiddush for Rabbi Yochanan, if he slaughtered it and he's a Toin Tanas Ganev, he also has to pay Dalet Vehei. Says the Gemara, and what we're talking about, when Shimon never did Shchita, he ate it, he shot it in his head and ate it, and when you kill an animal, you're not Chayav Dalet Vehei, you only Chayav Dalet Vehei if you do a Shchita or you sell it, and he ate it, not kosher. Ask the Gemara, why did he say that it's talking about where he ate as a treifa? I have a different teretz. Nevela, that means I shot in his head. Rav Tarfon holds that you only chayiv dalet vehei for shchita if you do a shchita and it's a kosher behema. If you did a shchita and it's not good shchita and the behema is a treifa, you're part from dalet vehei. So let's say the Ganev did a proper shchita, but it was not good shchita, it was a treifa. And Rab Shimon says, you're part from dalet vehei. Says the Gemara, no, Karameh. He holds that Karameh, the Oma shchita she'einu ruyo shmo shchita. If you did a shchita, even at the end, you found out that it's a treifa, since he did a proper shchita, you'll be chayav dalet vehei. So they don't want to say they did a shchita and he found out it's a treifa, because then you'll be chayav dalet vehei, because shchita, even though that it's not good shchita, it's considered a good shchita for chiyuv dalet vehei. As the Gemara, v'lishnele beben pakur, there's a special chiddush that if you did a shchita on an animal and it had a baby inside and the baby came out and it's living now, you could eat this animal without shchita. It's a special chiddush. And so let's talk about such a case. We asked the Shaila how he ate the animal and he's not chayav dalet vehei because he shechted the animal and there was a ben pakur inside. That's why he's not chayav dalet vehei, because the ben pakur was without shchita. So the Gemara, Karameh. The Omar ben Pakur ton shchita. He holds like the Shita Rameh who argues on the din of ben Pakur, and he holds that even a baby that was born b'shas shchita is chayav shchita. So the Gemara and the case where the Gemara wanted to suggest that I suppose that he stole this baby, this ben Pakur, and therefore he doesn't need not shchita, because if he stole the mother, he did shchita on the mother, so he'll be chayav dalet vehei. So the Gemara v'lishnele ki goin she'omad bedin v'omar loi tzei ten loi. That let's talk about such a case that Reuven gave Shimon the animal, and Shimon made a shvur l'sheker that he doesn't owe him anything, and they went to Bezdin, and Bezdin say, go pay him double kefel because it was Eidim that he stole it. And then only afterwards he slaughtered it. And in such a slaughtering, chayav dalet vehei. Let's see why not. Rava said, if Bezdin paskined after someone stole an animal, go give it back to him, to the owner, and then tovach u'morcha, and afterwards he slaughtered it or sold it, potter. He doesn't have to pay dalet vehei. My time, what's the reason? Kevan the psikele milsa, since Bezdin paskined that it's already Reuven's, the tovach u'morcha, and he went and slaughtered or sold it. Ave Gazlin, he's not Ganev, he's a Gazlin, he's doing it against Bezdin. The Gazlin, the whole chiddush of dalet vehei and kefel is by a Ganev, not by a Gazlin, like we saw early on. If Bezdin said chayav atalitin loy, but there's no gemar din yet, v'tovach u'morcha, and he went and slaughtered or sold it, chayav, he doesn't need to pay dalet vehei. My time kol kama deloy psikele. If Bezdin didn't paskin yet, milsa akati ganev, who is still considered a ganev, no gazlin. So over here we had the kasher Rabbi Yochanan who says that Toin Tanas ganev needs to pay dalet vehei. In the Brisa it says that he ate it and he doesn't have to pay dalet vehei. Let's say it's talking about a Bezdin paskin already, it's 10 loy, and then he slaughtered it, he becomes a gazlin. So the Gemara Amri ulitameich lishnele b'shutov shetovach sheloi midas chavera. I have another case to say that he shechted it and he's not chayav dalet vehei. Let's say two shutfim stole an animal and then one of them slaughtered it without permission of his friend. So it's called a goynev me'aganev on the second half because they shut him in this gneva. And we say that the Torah is only mechayev chamisha chatzei bokor v'lo chamisha bokor but no chamisha chatzoi bokor we darshan early on that the dalet vehei is only full dalet vehei, not half dalet vehei, and since the second half he stole from the ganev, is not chayav dalet vehei. So you have another case where you could explain the brisa. Elo chodom ritartut los anokat. When we said the teretz that's talking about nevela, enochenami, we could have said other terutzim. We could have said shutfim. We could have said the case of Rava, but we said one teretz. The guy ate it, not kosher, without shchita. Rabbi Abba said another thing in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. Atoyen tanas gane ba'aveda. So Reuven lost a item, and he comes to Shimon and says, "I heard you found my item." And Shimon says, "No, yes, I found it, but it got stolen." And he makes a shvur. And now we found out that Shimon really, it's by him and he stole it. Mishalim tashlumi kefel, he has to pay kefel, like toin tanes ganev, bepikodin also toin tanes ganev, be'aveda also has to pay kefel. My time, what's the reason? Dichsiv, it says in the pasuk, al kol aveda asher yoima, any aveda that he's going to say. And it said at the end, yeah, he pays double. So you see an aveda that makes a shvur sheker, he also has to pay double. How does it make sense? Are you telling me that by Aveda you also have to pay kefil? If you turn down as Ganev, it says in the pasuk, Ki iten ish, and we darshan that einitin cotton klum. That if a cotton gave you a picodin, and Reuven the cotton, and he gave Shimon a picodin, and Shimon lied, and he said it's stolen, and he made the shvur, he doesn't have to pay kefil. Because we learn iten isha, a person. Maybe that's only talking about where Reuven gave it when he was a cotton. The Tovei kishu cotton and claimed from Shimon when he was a cotton. Nosnei kishu cotton when Reuven gave over the animal to Shimon to keep when he was a cotton. The Tovei kishu cotton, and then he became a bar mitzvah, and he comes to Shimon and he says, "I want my animal back," and Shimon makes a shvur sheker. Minayin, how do we still know that Shimon will be potter from kefel? Talmud loymar ad Eloikim and Yovoid var shneim. And we dash from there, ad shetia nesina v'tvia shovim. We need that the giving over and claiming is the same. Ke'echod at once. And if it was a cotton by the nesina and the tvia as a godel, it's not considered. Dim isa. And if what Rabbi Yochanan said is true, that by Aveda you also chayiv if you're turned down as ganev. Why is it worse than Aveda when a cotton gave it to you? When this cotton gave it to you, it should be no worse than Aveda, and it should be chayiv kefel. It's talking about where Shimon ate it, where he's still a cotton, when Reuven's still a cotton. And Rashi explains that therefore, when Shimon ate it, the mafkid Reuven is still a cotton, and he's still not b'teres taina because he's a cotton. But in the case of Aveda, the person straight away when it's lost it and Shimon found it, straight to Reuven has a taina against Shimon, and therefore in the case where the person who has a taina is a godel like Aveda, then you could tovea. And therefore if he's about tvia, and if he's tovea and he makes a shvur sheker, it's chayiv to pay. But in our case, over here there is a cotton, and he ate as a cotton, b'shas achila, he's not about tvia because he's a cotton. And therefore that's why it's different. Ask the Gemara, what would be the din if Reuven gave Shimon a picodin when he was a cotton, and then Shimon ate it when Reuven's a godel, so then we'll say loy gora me'aveda, and he'll be chayiv kefel if he makes a shvur. He needs to pay kefel. If so, why until we came in the Bryce and said that you need that the giving over of the picodin and the claiming of the picodin is when Reuven's big. Listen, should say differently. Until the eating and the claiming is shovim be'echad, because we are saying that if Reuven gave Shimon as a cotton and Shimon ate it when Reuven's already a godel, that's achila, and then Reuven's toveat from Shimon, then you will have to pay kefel because loy gora me'aveda, so it should say in the braysa sheti achila betvia ke'echad, not nesina. Amalei, yeah, and ochenami toni, we learn in the braysa sheti achila betvia shovim ke'echad, not nesina. We change it and we're saying that it means really in the braysa achila betvia shovim ke'echad. Rav Ashi omaloi domi. Rav Ashi says a whole different teretz. Really, the din is that by Aveda you have to pay kefel if you turn tanas gneva and you lied and you made a shvur and you chayiv kefel. And when a cotton gives it to a godel, why you potter if you turn tanas ganav? Says Rav Ashi, lo domi aveda ka'asi mikoyach ben das. When Shimon found the aveda, whose aveda it is? It's Reuven's aveda. Aveda is a gadol. It's called a ben das. So on that you chayiv kefel. V'ho, but in the case where a cotton gave it, lo yasti mikoyach ben das. It's not coming from a koyach of someone who's a ben das, and therefore. And when it's not coming from a koyach ben das, he's a cotton, you're not chayiv. The Torah says in that case, you're not chayiv to pay kefil by Toin Tanis Ganev. Everyone should have a very blessed week with lots of happiness and blessings.